Bitcoin consumes more than a nation like Belgium, Switzerland, or Portugal. Bitcoin is an environmental aberration. Bitcoin will boil the oceans and cause the destruction of our planet. Bitcoin is the cause of COVID-19. These headlines are surely not foreign to you. Of course, the last one was made up. Bitcoin has nothing to do with the pandemic, and your common sense instantly detected the deception. However, the other three claims, while less obvious, are equally fallacious. The ecological argument against Bitcoin is regularly made in the media and on TV shows. And in this day and age, when environmental considerations have taken on a special place in the debate, the attack often hits home with the general public. Most of these reports and articles putting Bitcoin on trial for its environmental impact use assumptions and calculation methodologies that are often flawed. They make all sorts of shortcuts and extrapolations that are completely wrong, often demonstrating a complete lack of understanding of the subject. Bitcoin is an easy target because its energy consumption and environmental impact are easily calculated. Correction, seem easily calculated. It is actually very difficult to accurately map all the mining sites currently in operation and identify what kind of energy they consume. One of the latest controversial reports is the latest paper by one of the most active anti-Bitcoin opponents, Alex de Vries, who after all works with the Dutch National Bank. In my opinion, this is like asking the cab drivers union to do a study on Uber, but never mind. Anyway, I don't know what Satoshi Nakamoto did to him, but he seems to have been on a crusade against Bitcoin for several years, and his work is often reported by the mainstream media in need of sensationalism. Newsweek, for example, quoted one of its papers in 2017, predicting that Bitcoin would consume all the electricity available on our planet by 2020 if the network continued to grow like this. It's now 2021, and we have to admit that the prediction was incorrect. Well, that's to be expected. De Vries analyzed the energy cost of the Bitcoin network in terms of number of transactions. Unfortunately for the author, there is no correlation between the number of transactions processed and the energy used by the network. The number of possible transactions is constant on Bitcoin, whether you use it or not. In other words, electricity is not used to process transactions, but to secure the network. Anyway, and then in another 2019 report, he now explained that in addition to emitting phenomenal amount of CO2 into the atmosphere, Bitcoin, and specifically the mining industry, would generate as much electronic waste as a small country. Apparently 2 small transactions on the Bitcoin network would be the equivalent of throwing an iPad in the trash. Well, as Sebastian Guspiu explains very well in one of his articles, the 3 hypotheses on which Alex de Vries bases his conclusions, i.e. the evolution of the equipment every 18 months, the systematic replacement of all the equipment when the new technology comes out, so every 18 months, and a rate of 20% for the recycling of ASICs, are completely false and do not reflect the reality of the field at all. All this to say that the connection between Bitcoin, energy, environment, and ecology is much more complex than it seems, and I'd like to go into it with you in this video. Come on, let's go. First of all, it is essential to remember that the evolution of our civilization and the improvement of our quality of life have been, at least for now, linked to our ability to collect, channel, and use the energy present around us. The best example is the domestication of fire. The fact of mastering this new source of energy has transformed the destiny of humanity, and in all times, the domination and control of an area rich in energy resources has always been a decisive element in the development of the great world powers. Energy is at the heart of almost every economic activity. Without access to viable energy source, society as we know it would collapse in a matter of days. I know that today the followers of the degrowth have conquered many minds because our fears about the energy resources of our planet are strong. It is true that if we continue on this path, we will have in the next decades a real problem with the quantity of available fossil energy. Now, having made this observation, the long-term solution is not necessarily, in my opinion, to drastically reduce our energy consumption, but rather to think about how to exploit the energy present around us in a responsible and sustainable way. Humanity's development depends on increasing our energy capacities, not the other way around. Innovation and research will be key areas to achieve our goals. Now, in the short term, given these energy constraints, we must choose the areas we want to focus on. It's in this hierarchy of needs that we have to think about whether Bitcoin is legitimate to consume so much energy. And this is a completely different debate, and one that makes us think about the utility of Bitcoin. We have just done a few episodes on this subject if you're interested. To summarize, Bitcoin has two main purposes. Firstly, to be a completely independent, autonomous, and non-manipulable digital currency. And secondly, to offer a decentralized payment network without any intermediary and therefore uncensored. A technology that belongs to no one and that is intended to be global, open, and transparent. And so far, Bitcoin is doing just that. It does what it is designed to do. Now, whether such a technology is useful or not is up to everyone. My personal opinion is that we urgently need a sound currency and an unbiased system. And I think that there are many Lebanese who are recently told that their savings have been seized by the government. Now, it is also fundamental to distinguish between consumption and pollution. Even if I don't like the term consumption here, transformation would be more accurate. In short, the energy needs of a technology or an industrial sector are too often assimilated to CO2 emissions. This extrapolation is wrong. Currently, the Bitcoin network uses about 100 and 200 terawatt hours, depending on the estimates. But it would be completely wrong to extrapolate this figure directly into a quantity of CO2. By the way, let's note that 200 terawatt hours, so the high range, is equivalent to a little bit more than 0.1% of the world consumption, which weighs about 160,000 terawatt hours. We are talking about a drop of water in the international energy landscape, and honestly, it still surprises me that this is causing so much ink to flow. So yes, Bitcoin uses more energy than Norway, Switzerland, or Bangladesh, but the parallel could also be made in the other direction. Bitcoin consumes 8 times less than all the hot beverage vending machines in the world, or 12 times less than the standby devices in the United States. This kind of comparison makes very little sense in the end. As Mark Twain said, there are 3 kinds of lies: lies, damned lies, and statistics. And in the end, it is far more relevant to understand whether the energy in question is being used in the best possible way. And here again, we come back to the utility and legitimacy of Bitcoin. Now that we have some orders of magnitude in mind, let's also put things in context and compare the Bitcoin network with what it is trying to accomplish and the sectors it is trying to compete with, i.e. in particular the banks and the precious metals industry. Several studies have already been done on this subject. In particular, I invite you to consult the research of the Swiss Bitcoin Foundation of Dan Held, of Nick Carter, or the excellent report of Laurent Benichou. These analyses summarize the debate very well and show, for example, that gold or the banking industry have much greater environmental impacts than Satoshi Nakamoto's invention. So Bitcoin may not be perfect, but it is far better than the competition. Afterwards, a number of people will retort that gold and Bitcoin are both plagues on the planet. Plague and cholera. Both are strictly useless and waste energy. Unfortunately, such an argument demonstrates a profound misunderstanding of the current monetary system. Even if the currencies we use on a daily basis are no longer directly connected to gold, it is still the basic layer of the entire international monetary system. If you want to be convinced of this, look at what the major central banks keep or carefully observe the evolution of the gold stock of Russia or China over the last 20 years. For thousands of years, gold has been the ultimate store of value. Why is that? Because, in my opinion, gold is scarce and difficult to extract, no matter how much its price changes. Bitcoin wanted to replicate this model with its proof of work, which requires a significant amount of electricity. There's a reason why the term miner is also used in the crypto ecosystem. So we saw that Bitcoin was trying to address some of the monetary issues. And to do that, the network was using a tiny fraction of the world's energy. Unfortunately, we have not yet found any other solution to this problem of scarcity of money than physical and energetic constraint. When it is enough to write a line or to press a button to create money, as in the current monetary system, man with a capital M seems unable to control himself. And for people who would think about other consensus systems like Cardano's proof of stake or Ethereum 2.0, for example, these mechanisms have yet to prove their reliability on a large scale, in my opinion. The use of electrical energy by miners is therefore necessary and ensures the security and proper functioning of the Bitcoin network. The proof-of-work mining system is a wall of energy of almost infinite height at the moment, protecting the precious treasure of everyone who owns and uses Bitcoin. And make no mistake, a similar wall exists around paper currencies, dollar, euro, etc. as well. These include the governments, law enforcement agencies, and armies of the nations in question. They make sure that their currency network is not compromised. It would certainly be instructive to compare the energy consumption of the US Navy with the Bitcoin network. So, we saw that Bitcoin was trying to address some of the monetary issues, and to do that, the network was using a tiny fraction of the world's energy. Now, for those interested, let's discuss the source of that 100 to 200 terawatt hours. Recall that the main cost of a crypto mining plant is related to its electricity consumption. This is one of the most electricity cost-sensitive industries. Miners therefore set up shop where electricity is cheapest to increase their margin. They take advantage of the inefficiency of production sites and the grid. Acting as energy scavengers, miners use mostly energy that would have been wasted or lost. The miners manage to get these preferential rates down to 3 cents per kilowatt hour because they are the buyers of last resort. In the end, it is extremely rare that the crypto mining industry competes with the energy demand of a population. Sebastian Guspiu, who knows what he's talking about because it's his job, explained it in great detail in this interview. It's a relatively long discussion, but I urge you to watch it if you want to know more about the mining industry. Moreover, we can't talk about the energy mix of the Bitcoin mining industry without mentioning the Chinese news. Indeed, until recently, about 60% of the mining was in the Middle Kingdom. However, the Chinese government has recently taken significant measures against the crypto industry, preventing miners from accessing cheap electricity, as they could until now. As a result of these announcements, a part of the miners decided to relocate their operations abroad. According to the latest information, the big winners in this whole story seem to be North America and Kazakhstan, which are welcoming with open arms their orphans looking for a new home to welcome them. Even if the impact of this reorganization on Bitcoin's carbon footprint remains to be confirmed, given the fact that, for example, the factories in Kazakhstan are not necessarily much greener than the Chinese energy park, I still think the situation is better than it was, especially with regards to the decentralization of the network, but also with regard to the transparency of the industry. For example, American and Canadian miners now regularly publish their figures to reassure the general public. What was happening in China was much more opaque. For your information, the Bitcoin Mining Council, grouping several important players in the industry, recently published their second quarter report, indicating that the Bitcoin network was already more than 50% powered by renewable energy. Then, of course, there is always the question of the reliability of the data. Some will question the objectivity of this analysis, given that it comes from people working in Bitcoin. Yes, perhaps, but I sincerely believe that there is a real desire on the part of a large part of the Bitcoin community to decarbonize the industry as much as possible, and this for several reasons. Beyond the ethical issues, which are quite commendable, miners know very well that the large investment funds now have very strict ESG requirements. Larry Fink, CEO of BlackRock, which is a major player on the markets with $8 trillion in assets under management, clearly stated in the letter he sent to all the world's top CEOs that environmental considerations were now a decisive criterion for any investment decision. Moreover, as Sebastian Guspiu said again, many miners think that it will no longer be profitable to mine Bitcoin on fossil fuels in the years to come because of the competition on the network. That's why hydroelectric dams and geothermal power plants are particularly interesting targets for the industry. The future of Bitcoin is probably there. We are slowly but surely coming to the end of this first episode on Bitcoin and the environment. We are already preparing another video on the same subject, but to go a little further in the analysis. This time, we'll try to explain why Bitcoin, beyond not being harmful, could even ultimately be beneficial to the ecological cause by facilitating the energy transition or changing our consumption habits. So to be notified of the release of this next episode, I invite you to subscribe if you haven't already done so. On that note, see you soon for the new videos. Ciao!